Okay, so here we are, and I have to ask this question right up front. What was your favorite sketch on SNL?
Wow. It's hard to think of anything other than the more cowbell sketch because we've just seen so much of that, and it definitely was fun to do, and it was the closest I've ever come to breaking during a sketch, thanks to Mr. Farrell. So yeah, I guess I'd have to say that was my favorite.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Thank you, Bruce. I think if I just leave and maybe I'll come back later and we can lay down the cowbell.
Oh, baby. Gene, wait. Why don't you lay down that cowbell right now? With us. Together.
Do you mean that, Eric?
Speaks for all of us.
Thank you.
Babies, before we're done here, y'all be wearing gold-plated diapers.
What does that mean?
Never question Bruce Dickinson.
Roll it. One, two, three, four.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Chris Parnell.
Patrick Labyorteaux Show. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, you know him from Rick and Morty, SNL, Anchorman, and 1,000 other credits. I know him from the Groundlings and Fellini's, if you know, you know. On Melrose, please welcome Mr. Chris Parnell.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, sir. Thanks very much.
Chris, it is a thrill to have you here and talk, with you about your career. We've known each other for a long time. We started off at the Groundlings. We'll get into all of that. But when I interview people that I know, when, we're kind of like, we have, a history, sometimes it's really difficult because you don't know where to start because you've got an incredible resume of work. You've got like over 200 credits, and that's not counting like the 150 SNL episodes you did. So it's like you've worked a lot. Okay.
As have you, good sir, as have you.
Act 1, beginnings. But let's start off at the beginning because you're not from California.
No, sir.
What's your secret origin? Where do you come from, and how did you find your way into acting?
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I started doing plays in junior high and continued in high school. And I had a great theater teacher named Frank Bluestein, who's still a good friend of mine, who became my, sort of my mentor. And he was the one that encouraged me. It's like, if you want to do this for real, you actually could do this, So I auditioned for North Carolina School of the Arts, now called University of North Carolina School of the Arts, and thankfully got in and did a 4-year program there. Got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, very impressive, in drama.
You keep that in your wallet just to show people, I'm sure.
I fold it up and keep it in my pants pocket. It won't go in my wallet, but yeah.
Well, let's go back just a little bit further. So
Okay.
that's the way you get in for sure. Your dad was kind of a voiceover guy back home, right?
Yeah.
Was that an influence? What was the moment where Chris Parnell, the kid, goes, I want to do that? How did you find it?
Yes, my dad was a disc jockey. I think when I was born, he was a disc jockey. And so I knew about that side of his life for many years, but then he quit being a disc jockey and he went into business with a partner of his and had a recording studio. And so he would do voiceovers for commercials and things, and he would produce them and put music on and all that kind of thing. And if he needed a voice of a kid, he would get me or my sister to play those voices often. And so that was kind of like my first time trying to do anything. And I don't think it was probably very good, but it was fine for the Memphis market. And I remember looking at well, two things. I remember I was a big fan of Charlie's Angels, and really loved Farrah Fawcett. She was my first celebrity crush for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember having the thought, if I wanted to be around women of this level of beauty, what would be the best way to do that? And I thought probably to be an actor, and then I would be working with them, and I'd just be around them. Were I a little smarter, I would have thought to be a director or a producer, maybe. But yeah,
It's fascinating because there's so many. When I ask this question, like where does it come from? A lot of the guys answer, to be around pretty girls.
Oh, is that right?
Girls answer, yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. And a lot of the women answer that they like to be, that they're heard, which also kind of locks in with what that is. But
Sure.
Your experience in voiceover, which continues to this day, you've got a huge voiceover career. I recognize the magic that a sound recording studio can have. It's kind of like a casino, and that when you walk in, it's just dark no matter what time it is. The sound is kind of muffled, so you're always focused on what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
You hear your work in your head with your headphones. Do you connect with any of these ideas as far as like the calming nature of the studio? Do you like the studio?
I do typically like the studio, yeah, and I like all those things you're saying. Yeah, I only have one AirPod in because I like to hear my voice naturally through one ear, and I do that when I'm recording. But yeah, I do like it, and I like being able to go in there and sort of focus in on the script and what I'm doing, and especially now since COVID, whoever is directing me is probably going to be on an iPad over here on the screen up front, or just in my earphones. So it ends up being, in a lot of ways, a more intimate connection than if somebody's sitting in a control room at the back of the booth, in the back of the control room.
Right.
It's like you can kind of see them through the glass, but not really. So yeah, I like it. I love it, actually.
Is this your studio at home? Do you have a studio
This
at home?
this is my it's my little recording booth back there, which I mostly just do auditions from, but occasionally I'll do an actual job from there. Yeah.
Can you explain, if you know, because I kind of know the technical aspect of it, why do you like to hear your outside voice as well as your headphone voice?
I don't know why. I mean, it's the voice I'm used to hearing. I'm used to hearing myself speak directly from my ear as opposed to channeled through a mic and then headphone and all that. But I like to hear both. I like to hear what it sounds like coming through the mic and what it sounds like naturally. Somehow that's just what works for me.
Yeah. So you found this this way to meet pretty girls, basically. And then was that proved out in high school? Were the pretty girls at these classes, and did it kind of work, and it just sort of kept rolling?
Yes and no. I mean, I noticed a friend of mine in my class was in the drama club. This was in junior high, and I thought, oh, I didn't know there was a drama club. I didn't know there were plays that were happening at the school. So that's what got me to audition. And then I moved schools, went to this great high school, and there were definitely pretty girls in there. I was pretty clueless. I mean, I didn't have much of what we call game, Patrick. There were some very pretty girls who I think had some interest in me, and I sort of tried to go out on dates with them, but I was just, I had no juice, man. I had no juice. I was
We're the
lacking in
same
confidence.
as far as that. Yeah, it's just weird. I tell these stories on TikTok, and I'm now up to my fifth or sixth story of like, oh, I met this beautiful girl and nothing happened. Where it's not that you can close the deal, or that there's just sort of like that thing where it doesn't lock in for some reason.
But I'm surprised to hear that from you.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Why? We're the same.
Because you were on camera, and you were doing stuff as a kid. I had none of that.
That's true. But you've had it since, and it's kind of, I just find it interesting because it's very classic just guy, like we don't understand sometimes what it is that the ladies are looking for.
Right, right. For me, I think it was mostly a lack of self-confidence, you know. I mean, I had a few girlfriends in high school, and very pretty girlfriends, but, you know, there was like the one girl and sort of involved with the plays and stuff that I always had a crush on. And we were, you know, I think she liked me, but I couldn't. She was too cool for me, man. She was just too cool for me.
Well, life is life, I guess. So
Yeah,
you're
it's-
here now in Hollywood. So how did you get to Hollywood from Tennessee?
Well, you know, I went to college at North Carolina School of the Arts, now University of North Carolina School of the Arts, and you know, I think that was a great way of being exposed to, you know, different kinds of people, very theatrical people, you know, artistic people, dancers, musicians. It was fantastic. You know, I just loved it. It was like, oh, this is great. And then I worked for a summer at the Berkshire Theater Festival. I did summer stock there, and then after college I worked at the Alley Theater in Houston for a season in their like apprentice company. And I wasn't sure after that what I wanted to do. I felt a little jaded or a little bummed because I thought I'm going to go down to the Alley and they're going to see my extraordinary talent and they're going to ask me to stick around and do more plays. And I was okay, but that's not what happened, you know. And so I went back to Tennessee and taught high school for a year at my old high school with my old drama teacher.
What
Mr.
was
Bluestein.
that like? You're a school teacher? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was not cut out to be an authority figure. Certainly not at that point in my life. Like whatever I was, 25, I don't know. But like being Mr. Parnell and trying to maintain discipline in the class, and you know, I just.
What were you teaching? Acting or like
Yeah,
English and athletics?
No, I taught. You could do this thing in Tennessee where if you had majored in something, you could teach for 1 year without a teaching credential in that subject. So I taught acting, introduction to acting, and introduction to film and video, and you know, those were things that I knew about, and the classes that I'd taken when I was there, and you know, and then we would also work with these kids in a class called Production Workshop, which was the main one, where all of the business of the theater department and the TV studio happened, you know, and that was fantastic. So I helped supervise that too. But yeah, I was not. I liked working with all the kids after the bell rang. All the kids who were like really into the theater, into the TV studio.
Right.
That was great. And a lot of the kids in the classes were, you know, into it, but a lot of them were just like, you know, whatever. And then a few were kind of like troublemakers, and I just, it was not for me. So then, anyway, long story long, I decided, you know what, I should probably go for it for real if I'm going to try to be an actor. And I probably need to go to New York or Los Angeles to do that. And I always thought it would be New York. But I had friends out in
You
LA.
were right. Eventually.
Well, sort of, yeah. I had friends out in LA, and one of my best friends from college, Matthew Bazell, was moving back out to LA again. So we drove out together, and that was the start of it all, I guess, in some ways. I started taking classes at the Groundlings.
Was that like immediate when you came out, or had you been? When I was looking at your IMDb, I couldn't figure out, because you did a lot of television, but I don't know if that was concurrent with Groundlings, or if Groundlings was the first thing that you kind of did.
Well, when I had some friends who advised me. He said, you should take classes at the Groundlings. So I'm like, okay. You know, I was like, I want to do whatever I can. I started doing, you know, I did like some workshops, and I just tried to get my hands in as much as I could, student films and all this kind of stuff, because that's what my friends said. You should just do everything. Just try to do it all. And
That's good advice.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. But the Groundlings ended up obviously being the greatest part of it all, because out of the Groundlings came all work pretty much. It was.
Yeah,
I think
I'm looking at this. You were on everything. The Seinfeld, Friends.
all little guest star parts, you know.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you're right. And Jingle All the Way was this huge movie that came along pretty early, right? You were still doing Groundlings at that time.
Yeah.
And your scene was with Arnold, wasn't it? And Sinbad?
Yeah.
So
it was with Arnold. Yeah.
It's all new. You're on all these shows right around that time. What was it like to work with, like, because you weren't doing, like, I mean, I'm sure you were, but like a lot of people do low budget movies for years before getting a big movie. And you're starting off with this really huge movie. And I mean, what was the experience like with Arnold?
It was pretty cool. The crazy thing about it was I was actually working at a toy store when I got hired to play a toy store worker. And I was working at FAO Schwarz in the Beverly Center, which is no longer there. FAO Schwarz isn't. But it was, I was a little intimidated by it, but Arnold was fine. The thing that I remember thinking was just watching him like sort of hold court with the crew and just tell stories, and everybody was so into listening to what he had to say. And, he's a charming, charismatic guy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Just this whole idea of holding court was kind of new to me, and like, oh, I guess that's what big, famous, movie stars do. And I don't know. Some do, some don't. But it was all right.
I love that acknowledgement of, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Usually, the lead in whatever project you're in has a group of people always listening to whatever story they want to tell.
Yeah.
And some of them are horrible storytellers or they're racists and they tell horrible things. But like a guy like Schwarzenegger, from all that I understand, I've never met him. I've met him, but I've never worked with him.
Right.
He's very charismatic, very good storyteller, and very funny. Yeah. So I can see that that's kind of like, an experience that, you might take with you. And you were doing this while you were doing Groundlings?
Yes, I was just in classes at that point. I was just taking classes. I wasn't even in the Sunday show at that point. So it was very early on.
Okay, so let's talk Groundlings here. So my experience with Groundlings was amazing. I'll just give a big overview here. They have a program where you have a beginner, immediate, advanced. There's a writing lab in there. And then if you move forward in the program, you're into the Sunday Company, which is a performing company that performs on Sundays. And I think you can do 3 tours of duty of 6 months. So like you can be there a year and a half, which is where I was. I was there at a year and a half. And then they either vote you up into the main company or you're voted out to make room for new people. That's kind of the program. I found it because I had done other improv groups that were not as structured or honestly as good. And when I got to Groundlings, I could not get over how well everything worked, the positivity of the people there, the talent of the other students. So I'm done kind of introducing the Groundlings. Please tell me your experience at the Groundlings.
It was pretty great, like you're saying. I was very lucky. I had great teachers from basic through intermediate and lab and advanced. Great teachers giving me great direction and pushing me in different directions to try different things. And yeah, it was just a great experience. It was kind of a continuation of what I had found in high school with the theater department and the TV folks. And then you sort of recreate that in college. You have it in college, and then the Groundlings recreated it again. I'm a little older now. I know a little bit more about what's going on. But so many of my best LA friends came out of the Groundlings, And it kind of became the center of my social life, certainly. It was fabulous. It was wonderful. And then from that sprang Tony Sepulveda was directing us in the Sunday show, and from that he had me come in to audition for a role in Hope and Gloria, and that was my first sitcom part. And from that I got a manager, and then eventually an agent, and then a while later when I was in the main company is when I got spotted for SNL, thankfully. But yeah, it was
well.
It was
That's
wonderful.
The whole thing. The beauty of SNL, just so people understand, Tony Sepulveda is like a huge casting person. He was the head of Warner Brothers casting. And so you'd see a number of Groundlings all through Warner Brothers shows, which everything from, Friends to Nick Freno, Licensed Teacher, which you did, and which I did the voice of over on. But the other great thing about the Groundlings was in that time period when there was pilot season and when there was a lot of production here in Los Angeles, if you were looking for a young performer to be funny, you always stopped off at the Groundlings to see if there was anybody there that could fit, and you'd get either auditions off of a performance or a sketch. In our group, in the group that we were kind of involved in, right before us was Will Ferrell, Roy Jenkins, Sherry O'Terry, Chris Kattan. In our group, there was you, Anna Gasteyer, Scott Wainio ended up going to SNL with you guys.
Yeah.
Who else? God, there was a ton of people.
Stephen Cragg went there and wrote
Stephen Cragg,
for a while.
Will Forte.
Yeah, Will Forte, Maya Rudolph. But Will and Maya were a little bit after me. I think they were like in a group behind me. Yeah.
So in our experience with Sunday Company, I'm a huge SNL like baby and loved SNL, and I loved the Groundlings for its similarity, at least in my mind, you can confirm, of the idea of like, you would have a stupid 2-minute idea, you'd find a friend that you'd write it with, and then you would put that scene up that week, and if it was good, then it got in, and it was in the Sunday show. If it wasn't, then you wrote another one, and that was kind of the process. And like you said, that was why your personal life was so tied to it, because we were always either performing, rehearsing, or writing together. And it was just a great group of people.
I agree. It was. It's fantastic.
What do you think was the biggest lesson, because obviously we're heading towards SNL, what do you think the biggest lesson at Groundlings was that prepared you best for SNL?
Well, I don't know if I could pinpoint a lesson. It was more just doing the monologues and the scenes and all that stuff, which is perfect training for what you do on SNL. Not the monologues as much, but the good thing about the monologues was I had written the things that I think fared the best at were the monologues that I wrote at the Groundlings, and those you're able to take and cut around a little bit and translate into an audition piece very well, at least for SNL. So that was hugely helpful, in just getting the job, I think. But yeah, you're doing sketches, and that's what SNL is, so it's
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go there now. So we're performing at the Sunday Company. I'm voted out, which is, I ended up doing JAG, so I was fine. But it was like, I really was bummed that I didn't get into the main company. And of course, I would have loved to have been a part of SNL, but things happen in different careers, right? So you're at the Sunday show, you're bumped up to main company. Was it then you were saying that the SNL folks came around?
You know what? They came around at least twice that I know of. In the first round, they ended up hiring Anna. This is Sherry and Chris and Will had already gotten on, Will Ferrell. And they came around again, and so I heard that they were looking at us, and I think my agent sent some tape of little sitcom stuff I'd done, but nothing came of that for me. And I thought, oh well, that was my SNL shot. But whatever, it's fine. I'll hopefully get to keep doing sitcoms, But then, lo and behold, like maybe a year later, certainly a while later, I got a call from my agent at the time saying they wanted to fly me to New York to audition, and they had come back and taken a look at the group again, and which I didn't know.
Now it's not, no one knows, right? They don't tell anybody. It's kind of like a restaurant critic. They just kind of show up without letting you know. Yeah.
Apparently, yeah. I was so happy I didn't know. But even then, I think they had asked for more tape, maybe, which my agent had sent, and to their credit, did not tell me about. So it was like really out of the blue in a way for me when I heard that they wanted me to fly out there. So they're going to fly me out there. Yeah.
Okay, so you, unlike a lot of the SNL people, there's so many over the years, but you're going in knowing a number of people, and Anna, not intimately, but like her because you've worked with her at Groundlings, and did you know Will? I guess not.
I did. I knew Will and Sherry and Kattan a little bit, because I'd seen them in shows, and we, definitely chatted and that kind of thing.
So do you call these folks and say, I'm coming out, what the hell do I do?
Yeah, I did actually. I talked to Sherry and I talked to Anna, and the advice that I got, which was very helpful, was, what you're told by the show is to do 3 impressions and 3 characters. Anna was like, you don't need to do that. You can do, if you only got 2 impressions, do the 2 impressions. Because I didn't really have impressions. And you can do, 4 characters, whatever. It doesn't have to be that. And so that was very freeing, and that is what I did. I did 4 characters and 2 impressions, and thankfully it went pretty well. The other thing that helped me a lot with the audition was Mike McDonald and I auditioned on the same day for SNL. And we
Oh my
kept,
God.
yeah, we stayed in the hotel room next to each other, and we would go and do our scenes for each other and deliberately not laugh because we had heard to not expect laughter during the audition. And it was so helpful. I mean, it just like, to do it and not expect anything and just stay focused and just drill it in. And it made a big difference for me. And I did hear a little laughter, which was nice, but yeah. And then Mike went on and got Mad TV, and then, yeah.
Right. I mean, Mike is one of the funniest people I've seen perform. He's also one of the weirdest people, and I mean that in a very loving way, because we're all creative in different ways. But it's got to be weird to do these things, because that's one of the things you hear. And if you're watching this podcast and you don't know, NBC did a bunch of documentaries, and one of them you're in about talking about the first audition, or I know you're in one of them, but they're talking
I'm in the
about
cowbell one.
audition
I'm in the
process.
cowbell one.
The cowbell
yeah.
one, okay.
Yeah.
But they did one also about the audition process, which you're talking about, and I can't imagine doing comedy without laughter and knowing how can you feel like you are getting into a groove? I mean, it's got to be a bizarre situation.
It's really just, it's like doing a one-person show. You're just up there doing your one-person show. You've got your 5 to 7 minutes or whatever. There's one camera, pointed at you, and there's some people sitting out there in the dark that you can't see. But you just put on a show, like you would if you were standing on a stage in a theater, and don't worry about the reaction.
I know it's like it's in a theater setting, but it's more like shooting a film where no one can laugh, but you still have to have the comedy coming out.
Yeah, something like that. But you're still hoping for laughter somewhere, but you just can't focus on that.
So you guys do this. You go to New York. What's that long process? 48 hours, a whole weekend, 2 days? How long does it take to do all of that?
Well, they asked me to stick around another day or two, which I took as a good sign, to meet with some of the head writers and other producers and folks, and talk to them, and for us to get a sense of each other. And then I went back to LA, not kind of knowing my fate. I felt pretty good about it, but you don't know. Nobody had said to me, "Well, you got the job."
Right.
So you wait and hope to hear something, and finally I did.
How long was that process?
I don't remember how long the wait was. I feel like it was at least 2 months, maybe more. But I remember I had a pager at the time, as we did, pre-cell phone.
As always.
Yeah, I mean, I think cell phones existed, but they were still pretty chunky at that point. So I got a page from my agent, and so I called her back from the payphone on Ventura Boulevard, and she said, "You got it." And I took the escalator up that used to be there to California Pizza Kitchen there in Studio City, and I treated myself to a pizza. Yeah. So that was my little celebration.
Okay, so are you one of those actors that when you leave the audition, you're able to shut it off and not worry about it? So were you not that type of thinking, or do you hold on to stuff after the audition?
Well, at this point, I tried pretty hard to let it go. If I have a good audition, I'm going to stay hopeful, until I don't hear anything.
Right.
Occasionally I feel like I have a really good audition. Like I had an on-camera audition, an in-person audition, I should say, a few months ago. First one since COVID. It was fantastic. The casting director gave me some adjustments. I did it. Right. She seemed very happy with the performance. So, I had some hope that could come through. I didn't really think it would for a number of reasons, and it didn't. But, I don't know. With the SNL thing, I had a really great, confidence booster. After I was done with my audition, Fred Wolf, who had been the previous head writer at SNL, the year before I started and years before that, he told me, he was like, "That was the best audition I've ever seen." I was like, "Whoa."
Oh my God.
That's got to be good. I know.
Yeah,
it was
that's
incredible.
awesome.
It was incredible. So, that obviously had me feeling hopeful and good. But,
Have you seen your audition since then?
I have. I think I have. Yeah, I have.
How do you feel about it?
I felt like it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It wasn't. I mean,
Got you the job. I mean, obviously, it's just,
It
I'm always
did.
interested in what actors think of their own work. Are you critical of yourself?
Yeah, very critical. Very critical.
Yeah.
And as soon as I like when I was having my California Pizza Kitchen pizza, you know, I was filled. It wasn't just it wasn't, and this is the kind of person I am, unfortunately. It wasn't like, woohoo, oh yeah, I got this job, that's amazing. It was like, oh, holy shit. Okay, I've got this opportunity in front of me here. Am I going to fuck it up? You know, am I going to be able to make the best of this? And because I knew you know, it's your big break, you know, and are you going to run with it? Are you going to be successful? Or are you going to fall on your face? And so I had a lot of, you know, a lot of fear about it and insecurity.
It's so hard to deal with when it's so rare and far between in our business that you have an absolute win, right? Now, obviously, we're going to talk about all the different journey that you went through with SNL, but at that moment, that was your assignment was to go on an audition and get the audition, and you've succeeded. And so it's a real life win.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I mean, look, I get it. The California Pizza Kitchen pizza kind of is like that's your prize. You're getting a pizza and it's like, you know, I got a job and I'm getting food. It's really cool. How long before you went to because the thing I don't understand as a fan, but not having had the experience is, yeah, you get the call and then you have a meeting at Lauren's office that smells like popcorn apparently, and then you're on the show, but you're moving to a whole new city. How do you find an apartment? What do you do? They're not paying you a ton of money. People don't understand. No. You're not walking in like you're, you know, a TV hit. You're just another piece of machinery in the machine. So what's that like? How did you get a hold of that?
Well, I first went out there and Anna let me stay. She was gone for like the summer or something. So she let me stay in her fabulous little apartment in the West Village. No, not in the West Village, on West Broadway, Soho.
Okay.
And so I stayed there and I met with a realtor and we went around and looked at apartments and she was showing me stuff. I didn't really know the city too much. I'd only been there like twice before. She was showing me places and areas that just weren't very lively or didn't seem like fun. And so I didn't end up getting anything. And it was a while later that I got put in touch with this woman, Nadia Dejani, who was a New York actress, and she had an extra room in her West Village apartment. And so we had like a mutual friend. I got on the phone, we talked, and I said how much I was thinking about paying. She said that works. So I ended up moving in with Nadia, and it was great. You know, we're still buds, you know, we got along great. It was a great location. And but yeah, they do give you some relocation money. So that helps you get sort of started. But yeah, it's not much pay. It's a fraction of what you'd get, you know, even back then on a sitcom, you know, if you were a regular on a sitcom, yeah.
Now, how long is this process for you? So you find out sometime in the spring, and then you had the whole summer before you started the show?
I don't remember, Patrick. I think my feeling is that it was more maybe the top of summer or summer. I don't feel like I had to wait. I don't feel like I waited that long before. I mean, I guess obviously I had to go out there and try to find a place and do all that rigmarole. But yeah, I don't remember. I'd have to look in my little diaries.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. And I'm very excited to announce that we have a brand new class called Adult Weekly Class. Now, what is that? Now, that's a class that'll meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and you come in and you have an hour-long acting class with other students. It's very, very simple, very, very fun. So if you've ever wanted to be an actor or try it or just mess around, these classes are great. So the Adult Weekly Class is going to be every Wednesday at 5:30 Pacific. Now come and check it out. It's going to be really fun. Go to workingactorschool.com. Check out the website. You can sign up for the class there. If you need any other information, there's a phone number and an email on the website. You can get it there. And we would love to have you come and try. Talk to you soon. Act 2, Success. Well, okay, here we go. So you're at SNL, and I can't imagine what it's like at all. Although I have my dreams of what it's like. You know, everyone talks about it being a treadmill that just never stops. What was that like for Chris Parnell?
Well, I was really lucky in that I got put in an office with Will Ferrell and another fantastic gentleman by the name of Jerry Collins. And so that was great to begin with. I knew Will, and obviously I knew his work. He'd already, sort of made a big splash on the show.
Uh-huh. And wasn't Jerry from out here? Is that the same Jerry Collins I know?
Yes, it is. Yeah, sorry for the burp.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jerry was starting out as a writer there, and I knew Jerry from out here. So yeah, it was really sort of a warm place. We called our office the Gentleman's Quarters, and we'd have a scotch after the table read on Wednesdays. It was really great. But I was I did okay. It was thankfully people wanted to cast me in enough stuff that I kind of had shows, and I was trying to write and find people to write with. I took the Wednesday table read, is where all the work gets presented. You've written on Monday, you've written on Tuesday, all through the night probably. Everybody, you get to hear it on Wednesday. We're all sat around a giant table and read it. And so I would get the scripts delivered to my office beforehand because I wanted to be sure to read my scenes. Most people, I found out, didn't do that. They would just go in there and read it cold. Yeah, they would read it cold. It was a lot of stuff. And I was just like, I'm not gonna go in there and discover this piece cold. A lot of times the writers would...
But you're essentially auditioning, kind of, right? I mean, at least that's how I would look at it.
Well,
you're
a part of the ensemble for that piece that the writer has cast you in, and so you're auditioning the piece with everybody else who's in it to see if it's gonna, how it's gonna do. So, I just felt like I wanted to be as prepared as I could be, and if I had questions about what the writer wanted, I'd go talk to them. And sometimes writers would come to you and sort of give you a heads up, like, this is what this is about, and here's what you can expect. So even if you didn't read it, you would usually get some kind of an idea. But yeah, and then I don't know. Luckily, my first show was interesting because I did a commercial parody. Oops, I Crapped My Pants. I shot that with Anna. And a bunch of other folks. It was a
Which is already a classic. I love that one.
Yeah.
That was like your first project.
It was a good one. Harper Steele wrote that one, and it was fabulous. So that, and then there was a cold open called Oprah 2000. So this was in '98, the fall of '98, and this was the Kenneth Starr and Monica Lewinsky and all this stuff had gone on with Bill Clinton and Linda Tripp. And so they wrote this sketch about how everybody would be dealing with each other in the year 2000 on an episode of Oprah. So it was me as Kenneth Starr.
Wow.
Which, I didn't... What's an impression of Kenneth Starr? He wasn't somebody who'd been on TV a lot. I didn't know what he sounded like, so I had to try to put something together for that. But it's me and Daryl Hammond. It's John Goodman as Linda Tripp. It's Molly as Monica. It's a lot of folks out there, and it was the cold open. So thankfully, it went okay. And all of my Groundlings stuff and being on stage, it's just like, okay, I can do this. I can do this without being a nervous wreck. And that was really helpful, I had another Kenneth Starr piece in that too, where it was a Gap ad. It was a Gap jeans ad where I was dancing around in my Gap jeans as Kenneth Starr.
So when you're doing this work through the week, right? As a writer, I mean, there are specific people who will write, but everyone tries to write something usually, right? Because that's kind of like you write yourself in or you get cast. So if you want airtime, you either have to be cast or you've written something. Right. Do you try to write a lot or do you try to write one good thing? What was your approach to that?
I would try. I mean, I can't remember exactly what my approach was in the beginning because this was 1,000 years ago now. But I would usually try to have a few ideas and develop it. If I could develop one of those with another writer or set of writers, then I felt good about that. As long as I had something to submit for the read through on Wednesday, I was happy. I would try for more. You know, I try to, if I could be a part of 2 sketches that got submitted, that would be great. But yeah, you know, I knew that I wanted to be in the show as much as I could. That's the hard thing about SNL is you never know what your show is going to be until it's happening. But thankfully, you know, I think people recognize that I was a pretty reliable person at the table. You know, that I would really make an effort to deliver at the table read, and I you know, that added value to me, I think. So.
Well, I hear I'm a big, obviously, fan of the Seth Meyers podcast with The Lonely Island, and they talk glowingly of how professional your professionalism, and that you don't break. It seems like it was the thing everyone wanted to do, was to try to break Parnell.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, I didn't break. Just, you know, it's my personality. It's like I just took it probably too seriously in a way. Like I was so intent on being professional, and I'm doing the scene that this would not be funny to the character, so I'm going to be in the moment, and this character wouldn't be laughing at this. Why would I? You know. But you know, people like it when people break, and especially if you can see they're genuinely trying to not laugh. You know.
Of course, no, that's the whole thing. It's an expression of their personality, and your personality is one, like you said, you when you get SNL, it made you worried. That gives an insight into your personality of like how serious you take what you're doing is, as opposed to a personality where you're kind of like in the flow of something and you're not really thinking of everything. And if you're laughing, and it's a different variation of an expression of how you're doing your work.
It is. It is, but a lot of times I wish I had a little bit more of the other side, you know. I think I do now, but, you know, more of that freer thing.
Why is that? Why do you feel like you want more of that freer thing as far as what is it you see, what is it that you feel that they're getting that you're not getting out of that?
Well, it's not necessarily about breaking. It's just about being free as a performer, being free as a person, being just confident enough to just trust that what you're doing, the work you're doing, is good, and especially if you've put your homework in, and then being able to be there in the moment, you know, in the scene, you know your lines, you're just able to interact with the other actor, and you know, it helps a lot with acting to be able to feel a certain amount of freedom, I think.
Well, I think it's certainly, I understand that a lot, where what I respect and I love myself about prep is if you prep something enough that when you get on the set, those nerves are gone, that you don't know what's going on, and then you can just be there in the moment and act as you're reacting and listening to the other people. So prep is always important, I think. Yeah. But it's also that weird thing where, yeah, you prep it, and then you have to let all of that go and just sort of go with what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I would memorize pretty much all of my scripts on SNL, for better and for worse, because I wanted to do what you're talking about. It was just to be able to be in that moment with the other actors. But, you know, sometimes if a sketch is in a narrow, long set and the cameras are all way out there, you know, you need to bring your eye line out towards the cameras, and the cue cards help you do that. So, you know, it served me in some ways, and in some ways I think it wasn't the best, you know, because the camera wasn't seeing my face as much as it would have had I just been reading out the cards.
Well, but also, don't they, specifically on SNL, don't they cut lines for time between dress and air, so it like might be a completely different line than you've memorized?
Yes, it could be, and that did happen one sketch. What almost always happens, and what should have happened even in this case, was the writer will say to you, you will find out that there has been a cut, and they'll show you the cut, so you weren't just going to be shocked when you see it on the cards. But there was a scene and a section got cut. The writer failed to tell me about it, not remembering that I memorized my lines and didn't read the cue cards usually. So I'm out there and I'm doing my lines, and then there's a silence, and I realize, oh shit, and then I look at the cards, I'm like, oh, it's changed, okay, and then I,
Do you remember what scene that was?
I want to think, gosh, for some reason I want to think that, Avril Lavigne, I don't know if she was in it, or maybe she was the guest and Sarah Michelle Gellar. For some reason I want to think that Avril Lavigne was in the sketch, but I don't know if that makes sense, so I don't know.
That goes to a question that I just have generally. So I kind of guess I know how you're going to answer this based on how I know Chris works. But in this particular job, you're working with a major star every week. You've got major musical acts every week. Sometimes they're in the scenes. I won't even lead the question. What is that like to work with these, at least in the moment, in that week, they're usually the hottest thing in the world. So what is that like to be dealing with on top of everything else that we're talking about?
Well, I'd worked enough in LA at that point and been around some fairly famous people. It's just like people are people. And if people are nice, which the most people are, it's not that big of a deal. It all depends on the person, Some people come in and they're everybody's a little bit off, on their heels because they don't necessarily know what to expect unless they've done the show. But it's just, it all depends on what they bring. Like, I always think of Juliana Margulies, who was on in my first season, and she was game from the meeting in Lorne's office, because Stephen Craig would sometimes dress up as Mark Twain to do his pitch. and so he had arranged with her to do this bit, and she, they did this bit during the pitch, and she was just like, playing it for real, and it was great. But she was somebody who was just such a real person, and obviously a very talented actor, that it was just a pleasure. And most people are like that, Some people are more easier to connect to than others, And then you get to watch the musical guests. Sometimes you get to meet the musical guests, not necessarily, but you'll get to watch them rehearse on Thursday. If you're able, you go down to the studio to watch them do their music check, their sound check. And that was exciting. That was pretty fun.
Okay, I got a bunch of these questions for SNL, which I want to get to, but I have two things we got to talk about beforehand.
Okay.
Or actually three. You kind of brought up cowbell. You've been involved in, obviously, because when you're on a show like SNL, some things just pop out of nowhere. Your process kind of stays the same. You're just churning out ideas and funny stuff, and then some stuff explodes. And Lazy Sunday was like the best example of that, where I don't know if I'm overstating it, but at least my experience was that was like the first viral video that I can remember where it just kind of exploded on YouTube. It kind of made YouTube a thing, and also kind of made that class of actors in Lonely Island and your group kind of a thing, like out of the largeness of the cast, you guys all popped because of Lazy Sunday. How did that? Obviously, the process of making it was kind of similar, I'm sure, as to all the other things you were doing, but the reaction was completely different. What was that experience like for you out of nowhere?
Well, I have to say the process of making it was not at all like what we were usually doing there. Because usually if we were shooting a commercial parody or whatever, it was, being done with this crew, this whole union crew and camera operators and all this, and a director and all this stuff. When we made Lazy Sunday, it was just Andy, Akiva, Yorma, and me. Akiva directing and Yorma kind of directing too, operating camera, holding the playback speakers. It was just the four of us running around the city, really over the course of, I think, one day, shooting all of that. And Andy and Akiva and Yorma, having done the stuff they'd done already, they had this amazing skill set to know how to do this, and also how to make a rap song. And they had seen me do my Weekend Update raps, and asked, came along and said, "Would you want to do this with us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, of course." So we wrote it together one day. Even though they did not give me credit for that on their Lonely Island podcast, which I brought up to Yorma when I saw him at the 50th. So yeah, we wrote it together, World,
Right.
all four of us, and recorded it in their office, and then yeah, went out the next day, shot it, and then they edited it the next day. I think they were probably editing it on Saturday during the day. But yeah, and then I didn't really know. I mean, we felt good about it. We knew, oh, this did well. The audience reacted well.
Right.
But I was at home over Christmas break when I got a call saying that somebody wanted to interview me from the New York Times. I think is what it was. And
wow.
and that was like, oh, it was about Lazy Sunday. So I was like, oh, I guess this is something. This is a thing. I wish I'd had
Go ahead.
Oh, I wish I'd had the smarts to have bought stock in YouTube or whatever. I don't know if they were a publicly traded company then, but.
Or also writing rights for the ASCAP residuals, I'm sure, is another thing.
Well, I do get that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm an ASCAP.
Okay, good. I feel much better. So this kind of explodes, and then apparently, from what I understand, again, super fan, just putting things together. Natalie Portman comes on because of Lazy Sunday, wants to do something with The Lonely Island, and then you're a part of Natalie's rap, which again explodes and is like super popular. That has a different look because you're on a set and everything. So your part where you're interviewing her, was that a different experience than the Lazy Sunday shoot?
Yeah, it was very different. The similar thing about it was we were lip syncing, so we had recorded our audio beforehand. So when we're on the interview set, everything I'm saying to her, I'm lip syncing to what I've already recorded, and there's a reason for that. I think it's to keep everything sounding the same. I can't remember. It's probably obvious to a slightly more intelligent person than I, but yeah, that we did that, and then she bashes me with a chair, but she's great. She was lovely to work with, and so committed and great in that piece. She really wanted to be a bad girl, show a different side of herself.
Half of me is listening to you, and half of me is like going, how do I ask him, like, God, she's so cute. I mean, it's like we're just stupid boys, and you're around these women, and if you got into acting because of that, here you are, you're with Natalie Portman, who's just gorgeous, and 1,000 other people in that process. I mean, what is that like? I mean, is it weird? I mean, is it just, I don't know. I don't even know what the question is here of like, are girls pretty in person? Yes. What's it like?
Some are more than others. Some of them you see them in person, they're like, oh, that, they're not exactly as handsome or as beautiful as I thought they were from seeing them, on screen. But, also the meeting somebody and interacting with somebody for real, it humanizes them. They're no longer just a beautiful actor. And, they don't even necessarily have to be a bad person or anything like that, but it's just like, oh yeah, okay, well this person is, they come across as a very young person, and because they are, and that's fine, and that's great, but it also sort of shatters this illusion of like, oh, this gorgeous woman, who I've watched on television or movies for years, it's like they're human beings, and being in, actually having a romantic connection with something is a much more complicated thing. So
you do these two things. Natalie Rap is really big. Was that something, again, where you guys knew that you had done something that you were proud of, and then it just becomes this huge part of your experience there?
Well, with that one, I was kind of a guest star in that one. It was really Natalie and Andy, and obviously, so I mean, I think there was a feeling that whenever we ran it, whatever show that was on that she hosted, that it went over, I think, quite well, and so we had a sense that this has a good shot of being, another hit on the internet and everywhere. So, but yeah, I couldn't take too much. I couldn't take any really ownership of that other than my little scene. It wasn't the same as Lazy Sunday that way.
Are there shows and sketches and bits that you don't even remember being in because it happens so fast?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, something, I might see something on Instagram. I might see, there's site. I think it's called SNL Reels, Reelz, and they're always showing SNL clips. And sometimes I'll see something on there. It's like, oh, right, I forgot about that. Or somebody might mention something to me, and I'll be like, I don't know if I remember that one. And then the worst thing that I did one time was there was somebody who had hosted, and I ran into them later at SNL, like not in the studio. They weren't performing, but I just saw them in the hallway, and I was like, I went and introduced myself, and they were like, I know, I did the show with you, And I was just like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Of course you did.
I'm sure you have it. I'm sure you have a fix now, but my fix for that is no matter who it is, even if it's I know someone that I know I've never met, I go, hey, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux. It's really nice to see you. Where I try not to like make it like, but yeah, I've been that.
You just say it's good to see you. Good to see you. I'm not that. I will usually say if I'm pretty sure it's the first time I'm meeting somebody, I will introduce myself. But obviously, I get that wrong sometimes. So I mostly will just say, hey, good to see you. Hey, how are you? And also because there's this thing of like, if you've done it for a while, you probably know who this other person is, and it's not like you have to be super formal about it, and you're like, oh, hey, fellow actor, or whatever. So.
Right, and your history and career kind of fills in a lot of the space in between. Okay, so here are the SNL questions. And again, these are just questions. There's no wrong answer because you're you. These are your opinions, all right?
I still might get it wrong, Patrick.
Yeah, I have the real answer here. So, okay, who was your favorite host?
I think probably Juliana Margulies. I was smitten with her, but I was just so I was so dazzled by her. Well, I didn't watch ER. I knew she was on ER, but I had zero expectations when she came in.
Yeah, but just as a human, I mean, without ER, she's still like drop dead gorgeous. And then you add a personality to that. How do you not?
Exactly. And then I thought she was quite funny. I thought she made really good choices, and yeah, so I was a little smitten with her. And she's such an amazing actor. I loved The Good Wife and all of this stuff. She's awesome.
Okay, you mentioned this before, which is another thing that I'm fascinated by SNL. All the best musical performers in the world have been there. Not asking who your favorite band is, but what was your favorite musical performance where you were like, fuck, what was that?
No, that's very easy. It was the late, amazing, great Val Kilmer was the host, and U2 was the musical guest. And when they performed their number, this is when Bono walked off the stage and walked around the studio singing the song, and that was very unrehearsed. Nobody had an idea, at least nobody on the production side knew that was going to happen. Yeah, so they're bringing up the house lights, and the camera operators are scrambling around to get to keep the camera on him and to cover it, and they were able to because they're really good. And Beth McCarthy Miller, who was directing it, is an amazing director, period, but also especially of music. So they helped, make that moment happen too. And it was like such a rock and roll moment. It's like, God damn, and I was out there on the floor, so it was all happening like kind of in front of me, so that would have to be the winner, without a doubt.
Like I said, man, no wrong answers. That is a really, really good one.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a little bit more specific. What is your favorite experience moment on the show? It doesn't have to be a sketch. It could be behind the scenes. It could be, but like the moment where when you think of SNL, you go, that was the best moment.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I can think of two. One was when I did my first Weekend Update rap. I did a rap to Britney Spears, and that seemed to go very well.
It did. It was hysterical.
Yeah, and then I did a scene called Steve Baxter, Hollywood Gynecologist, that Harper Steele also wrote that one. And I am sort of like, it was such a strange piece. Bill Murray is Steve Baxter, the Hollywood Gynecologist. It's not a piece that would get on now, probably. But I'm this, song and dance man, introducing him, singing and dancing and doing this little number, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, that was fun. It was the kind of thing I hadn't really done on the show and never did again because I didn't take Lauren's note between dress and air. I did this crazy head movement thing that, just like, wow, trying to, be a singer in the moment. It was bad. And he said, don't do that, Chris, don't do that. I did it anyway. I never did another one of those pieces. So I learned my lesson the hard way, but it was a good performance, I think.
Side quest here. Lauren is the producer of the show. He's famous. Everyone knows Lorne Michaels. You get a note like that. As a performer, your job is to be the best performance that you can. So what's the thought process that goes through when you go, nah, I'm not going to do what Lauren wants? What was the thought?
It was so naive. I mean, it was so young. My thinking was so young and naive. Because to me, in my mind, that little moment was the funniest thing that I did in that little number. It was nothing. It got nothing from the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
But I thought, that's the touch of genius I'm adding to this. So after I got the note, I remember I talked to Tina, and I was like freaking out. I was like, I don't know what to do. That's like the main thing I have in the piece. That's my funny thing that I added. And it's just like, good Lord, no, you're a fucking idiot. Like, no, just don't do that. And so yeah. Not
I
smart.
love it because I mean that's the performer, that's the creative, the artist in you. Where I've done the same thing on some much smaller things where you go, I know that no one likes it, but I think it's hysterical, and I got to do it, and you got to do it, and sometimes you win, sometimes it doesn't go.
Yeah.
Okay, favorite cast member to perform with, like you always look forward to working with.
I mean, Will Ferrell, Will Forte was great too, but Will Ferrell for sure. Because he was just such a, it's for all of the obvious reasons, but also just such a nice, good person, and just made me laugh so much personally, and just, I don't know. You didn't necessarily know exactly what you were going to get. He was very reliable, but, like what he did in the cowbell sketch, and other stuff that I was in with him. Such a, if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be Will. Yeah.
Your favorite writer?
Paula Pell. For
She's
sure.
a great writer.
Yeah.
What was the one thing that you worked with her on so that people know what she's capable of? I can't name sketches. I just know that she's super talented.
The one big one that she did with Rachel Dratch that they wrote together was Debbie Downer. I did a character with her called Terry Funk that only made it on the air like once. We went to dress a few times, and then I did another scene with Horatio and Will Ferrell came on as the host of the show. I did the character again, but what else? I mean, she wrote. There was a group called 5 Degrees Celsius, I think. This boy band thing.
The boy band one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was Paula's. And then I think she did the cheerleaders with Will and Sherry. What else did I do with Paula? I did a few other things with. Bring It On Down to Omeletville with Justin Timberlake. That was actually my idea, and but Paula, made it work like it did, and so did Justin. I mean, he sold it so well. But yeah, Paula's a genius.
Was that different because now you're singing with this person that you don't really ever think you'd be singing with?
Well, I didn't really have to sing with him. I was singing by myself, and then he was singing. I was singing this really lame song to come on, to whatever my restaurant was that I was trying. I was the mascot for. I was like a piece of bacon and some sunny side up eggs. So it was more of a contrast. I didn't have to actually try to sing with Justin, thankfully.
Just so many experiences. Okay, so I think I kind of have half of the answer to this. What is Lorne really like, and do you have an impression?
Well, and I think everybody's got a Lorne impression. It's a little bit like that, and I kind of describe him as a distant father, distant father figure. Kind of, cool, a little reserved, But if you can get him to laugh at something, at the table read or whatever, it's it's pretty satisfying. But I always got along with him. Even after I got fired and rehired, he brought me into his office and said, "I made a mistake. What can I say?" Which is, I think, rare for Warren. So yeah.
Well, we're there. So okay, tell us. I have it here. Please explain your hiatus from SNL.
Yeah.
So that we get the straight up story from you. What was that all about?
I never really knew, Patrick. I've never known why it happened exactly. I don't know. It was a big shocker. Every summer it would happen that we were supposed to find out, I think, like at the end of June, whether our contract had been renewed for the following season. And it was never at the end of June. So we would usually hear from our agents like, Lauren hasn't decided yet. So is it, can you just wait for a few more weeks or whatever? And of course, like, what are you going to say? Like, no, I need an answer now. And so that had happened, as usual. And I was like in touch with Dratch and a few other people, I think. And, we just thought, well, we're all going to go back on. There's no reason to think we're not. And then I got a call from my manager saying, buddy, I don't know what to tell you. They're not going to bring you back. And I was like, wow. I mean, it just, it was a pretty big hit. And you immediately realize how much of your own sense of self-worth is wrapped up in this idea of being a Saturday Night Live cast member,
Right.
Thankfully, I had a few people go to bat for me. Will Ferrell and Catan apparently went in and talked to Lorne. And then a writer, T-Shawn Shannon, wrote this scathing piece where he really took Lorne and the head producers to task. It was set in a Benihana, and I was the chef. I had been the chef at Benihana, an amazing chef, but he had gotten fired, and everybody was asking, why did you fire him? He was great. He did this, and he did that, and what? So that was the sketch, and they did it. They read it at the table, from what I've heard, to crickets, because it was like fucking pointing the finger hard at everybody that involved with me getting fired or letting me be fired or whatever. So, but I never really knew why. At one point, I heard it was an NBC executive that I sort of knew who didn't like me, but I also heard it was budget cuts. I don't know. I never got a straight answer, and I didn't dig too hard to try to find out what it was, because I don't know that I really wanted to know.
Why did I? Yeah, exactly. That's not the one you want to find out. Honestly, from the most painful part.
Yeah.
So, how long were you off the show, and how did you come back?
Well, almost immediately after getting booted off, I started to hear. I think it was Jerry Collins, bringing Jerry up again, his wedding to Lori Nassau, who was a writer on the show. And at their wedding, I think it was Will who said to me that, or maybe it was Tim Meadows, I'm not sure, but either Will or Tim said, I heard that the door's not completely shut with that. So, just stand by. And then I started to hear the same thing from my manager. And I'd given up my apartment, but I'd kept all my stuff in New York in storage, thinking, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to go back. But it just kept being this, he says he might still bring you back, blah, blah, this up and down, this, and finally I was just like, fuck, I'd already moved back. I'd already had a place back in LA that I'd rented. And I was like, I got to just move my stuff back. I can't live in this limbo for this many months,
Yeah.
So moved my stuff back to LA, and then shortly thereafter they rehired me. So I was off. This was, it was my 4th season. I missed the first 12 episodes of a 20-episode season. But I was very happy to go back. I was thrilled to go back, and it set me back on my heels because I felt like I was kind of had a lot more confidence at that point, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh no, don't have too much confidence because this might happen,
So when people have a near-death experience, sometimes they come out of it like, well, fuck, I've already been there, nothing can hurt me now. that wasn't your experience. You were kind of like regressed back to that first year again.
Well, not that far back.
Okay.
And it was a great sketch. It was like a 70s style game show where I played Bert Convy, and it was one of those wonderful sketches which were my kind of favorite to be in, where it's almost the whole cast is in it, you know. So you have all the cast playing these different celebrities doing celebrity impressions, and you're playing this host, and so you get to be out there with everybody. It was such a great way to, you know, get back on the show and to be a part of that with the whole gang, and sort of be in charge of that sketch, you know, be given the wheel for that one. But yeah, I mean, it definitely set me back some. But then the next season, I don't know, it might have been that season, even at the end of the season, at some point Tina Fey wrote a sketch called George Bush Auditions, because Will left the show and they needed to find a new George Bush. And so it was basically, we just read it at the table, and she had written it so that everybody, all the guys anybody who stood a vague chance of playing Bush was in it. And they liked what I did, so they made me Bush for the next season, extended my contract. I only played Bush for one season, because I never sort of got it figured out. But yeah, so that was, you know, those were kind of like confidence boosters, and you know, and also just the degree to which everybody welcomed me back, and the degree to which everybody was, I think, genuinely surprised that I'd gotten let go, you know. So that was all very comforting and supportive.
How would you describe was there a difference between like Parnell 1 and Parnell 2? But 12 episodes is a lot when you're in the middle of it, but not a lot when you're looking back on it. But was there a difference for you?
You know, it took me a bit to get my confidence back, I think, you know, and to sort of feel like I had some steam, you know. One thing that interestingly happened was that Trump hosted during the time that I was off the show. And I look back on that with delight. I was not there for that. Also the other awful thing, I mean, the great tragedy was 9/11. You know, I was not.
Oh wow!
In
that
New York
happened right in the middle.
Yeah, that happened at the beginning of what would have been, you know, my 4th season. Yeah. So.
Well, not the 9/11, but the other thing you mentioned. Who was your most nightmare host that you had an experience with?
Well, I can't really. It wasn't anything between him and me, but I didn't care for Tom Green. Tom came on the show and really wanted to make it into the Tom Green show, and Lorne kind of let him. And I just, it wasn't my kind of comedy. It just wasn't my cup of tea, and I resented the fact that, I mean, I think Lorne thought he was like the next Andy Kaufman or something. I don't know, but he just sort of let these sketches go up that were just like, oh man, I don't know. And I'm not saying Tom's not a talented guy, but just I did not like what he brought to the show that week, you know. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so now you've done this. You've been hired twice. Now it's time where you leave SNL. And how does that process happen? And is that something that you generated, or you were just kind of like, okay, well, now is time? Or how does that happen when it's not a surprise?
Well, technically, I was fired again. I was let go again. I was ready. I was ready at that point. I was okay, and I knew that might be coming. But they gave me the opportunity, you know, to sort of walk away on my own. But I just thought, look, if they'll bring me back for another season, it's work. I enjoy the work. Of course, I'm going to come back for another season. If they'll have me. They didn't. It was fine. I left with, I think, Horatio and maybe Dratch. I'm not sure, but you know, I was in very good company when I left.
Yeah.
And I was in good company when I left the first time. Jerry Minor, who'd only been on as a cast member one season.
Jerry was really talented. Yeah.
Jerry's amazing, both as a writer and a performer, and so yeah, but yeah, so it was not the same kind of blow on any level. I knew there was a good possibility that I was, you know, my contract was not going to be renewed, and it was okay.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. But we also teach kids. We have a great class called the Youth Weekly class that's every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's for kids. It's for like 10 to 17. And we have a great group of kids right now, and it is ongoing. So if you know someone that wants to get into acting and has never done any acting but would love to try, why don't you have them try starting off with Youth Weekly? Just go to workingactorsschool.com and check us out. It's Youth Weekly every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Act 3, present day. So we're past SNL. Now you're doing a ton of different things. And I don't know if these are happening in hiatuses or not, but you give performances in Anchorman and Anchorman 2, Walk Hard, 21 Jump Street, Hot Rod, plus a ton of other things. In TV, you're 30 Rock, Archer, Rick and Morty, American Dad, and Family Guy, as far as like just a general idea of things where you were involved with more than kind of one episode.
Right.
With your movies, Anchorman had Adam McKay and Will kind of being the creative guys behind that.
Yeah.
What was it like working? I mean, Adam was he the head writer or just one of the people that worked at SNL?
No, he was the head writer. I think he became the head writer at this season that I started, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a dream. It was fantastic, you know. I mean, Will and Adam had told me they were writing this movie and they had a part for me in mind. The part they had in mind for me was Brick Tamlin, the Steve Carell part, which I auditioned for, but I had just I had such a different idea of what they were expecting from me. And you know, honestly, I could never have done it as well as Steve Carell did. He is brilliant and was brilliant in the role. They very kindly gave me the role of Garth Holiday, which was very much in my wheelhouse. But yeah, it was so much fun. I mean, so much fun to be with that cast. And then I just remember watching Will up on the news set, like improvising stuff, like false made up news reports, and they were just like, oh my God, so good, so funny. And then Adam McKay would throw out, you know, alts to us frequently, and then like with my poop mouth scene, that was a case of you know, Adam just letting the camera roll. I did the lines that I was supposed to, upset about Ron, and then I remember thinking, oh, he hasn't called cut. He wants me to keep going. So then the poop mouth thing came out happily, because that ended up, I think, being my best scene in the movie.
There's so many quotable lines from that movie, that being one of them. I don't know if it's an actual quote of yours, but we do it in our family as you, which is, why'd you do it, Ron?
Oh yeah.
Like when we're disappointed with something, like with the dog or whatever. Was it because so many people were there from SNL? Was it similar or was it different in a way on Anchorman?
No, it was very similar, and even more so in some ways, because it was, you know, Adam was at the helm as opposed to Lauren,
right.
You know, and you know, and Judd Apatow was involved, and there were just a lot of really smart, funny, talented people around, and you know, just feel lucky to be in that mix with Fred Willard, and you know, it was pretty fantastic. I mean, and it was.
Now Judd Apatow also was Walk Hard, another one of these joints where you get in with a group of people and they just kind of bring the. People like to work together if they like that experience, so there's no reason not to do another one.
Exactly.
Was that a similar experience, or was it different in any way for Walk Hard?
It was a little different, but a lot of fun. I mean, you know, I had not worked with John before, but he's obviously brilliant and a super fun guy to work with. And then that's doing that is really when I got close to Tim Meadows. When Tim and I connected much more on that than we ever had at SNL, because he'd been on SNL for so long when I arrived, and then we only overlapped by a season or two, and we got along, but there wasn't much bonding time. But
Right.
but that was one of the great gifts of Wildcard too, was getting to know Tim more, and we have the same birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that dude, and he's so funny. But yeah, that whole cast was great, and Matt Besser and Jenna and John Riley, just it was a brilliant performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm just a fan of Lord and Miller as far as their writing. You did 21 Jump Street with them. Was my understanding is they try a lot of things and they're very fluid with their script. But what's it really like when you work with Phil Lord and Miller?
No, it's exactly that. I mean, they've got a good script to begin with, but then there's so much room for improvisation, and then sometimes throwing out different ideas and things like that, and there was a lot of room for that, which is great. It's I don't improvise on stage anymore. It's been so long since I've done the Groundlings, but
Right.
I do find myself needing to improvise and things like that, and somehow I like it more because it's they can always edit it, if it doesn't work.
Right.
You can
right.
always
Yeah, it's
cut
not going
and-
out live. It's
Yeah.
not the only chance you're going to get.
Yeah. So.
Well, again, another one of my favorite ones is Hot Rod. Just I love that movie. I love the Lonely Island guys and their type of comedy.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, it was a small production on location. So is that a completely different experience than the other two?
It was different in that, I mean, my part in that was much smaller. But I'm sure there was improvisation going on at certain points. I may have done something, I don't know, but the stuff that I was given, it was so brilliantly written. My tattoo speech, when I'm talking about AM radio, exposing my belly, and all of that. I think Akiva wrote that. Just, I mean, so much great written material. It's like but yeah, I mean, those guys are so great. And then it's just, it's a joy to work with people like that. They're not just really talented and smart, but they're really nice people. That's what you
really
always
sweet.
hope for.
That means a lot. I mean, it does, because there's a lot of people that I've worked with that believe that the more conflict, the better the project, which I disagree with.
Yes.
And it's sort of like you're there living a life with people 8, 12, 10 hours, whatever, however many times, how long you're there. And it's nice to be with people that are good people. We get to now just your TV credits. I'm looking at my screen and my notes here, and I'm laughing because it's like, this is an entire career for anyone else. 30 Rock, Archer, Rick and Morty, and then American Dad and Family Guy. Now, American Dad and Family Guy is like a killer voiceover job on both of those, where you were kind of all over both of these things, right? Just doing voices everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, periodically. I had a semi-regular. I had an arc as this character Doug on Family Guy, that he was like Stewie's arch nemesis. So that was really fun. But yeah, I've done a few other things on there, and then American Dad has brought me in to play President Garfield a few times, and but other various roles too. But yeah, that's always fun. So always happy to get to do that.
And again, with Archer, it's such a good show. And when we talk about that and Rick and Morty, I don't know how let's stick with the animation just for a second. Animation is weird because you go in, you read, and then you don't see it maybe for 2-3 years because they're animating it somewhere and then it comes back out. How was your experience with Archer?
It was fantastic. I mean, from the very beginning, also, I mean, the writing was always so good. And then FX as a network to work with was so great, because even from my first season, they paid us a respectable wage. I wasn't getting rich, but to their credit, they kept they raised our salary as we went along. And
Right.
we really never had to negotiate, because what they would offer us every period was like, oh, okay, this is great. Thank you. This is fantastic. And they would give us bonuses. So FX was delightful that way. And then, Adam Reed and Matt Thompson and Casey Willis, the people who made the show, just fantastic. And then the cast, we would see each other at things like Comic-Con. We went to San Diego Comic-Con many years with the show. And that was, I always look forward to it because I like all those people so much. And it was just fun to be with them and hang out with them, It was fantastic. And, we were all, I think, pretty sad when it came to an end after 14 seasons. I wasn't really in a position to complain.
Of course, but you missed the experience. I mean, it's
Yeah.
such a great. And so when you're doing that, and then you end up in Rick and Morty. Before we get to Rick and Morty, you also had a lot of work on 30 Rock as Doctor. I can't say it right. Simmons.
Spachimin. Dr. Leo Spachimin.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining in my mind of story that it came with your relationship with Tina, that you just got a call, but I don't know. How did that happen?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but yeah, it was an offer. Tina Fey and Robert Carlock, who had also been a writer at SNL, created 30 Rock and created that part with me in mind, and so it was just this amazing gift, that I kept getting to do periodically over the years of the show, and I've just, so well written, so just feel very lucky and thankful to have gotten to play Dr. Spaceman.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's so many great moments in that show, and it was one of the first shows I remember being as fast as it ends up being, which is now kind of the standard, but has nothing on Rick and Morty when you get to the speed of the jokes that you guys are doing. What was your introduction to Rick and Morty and to that world? Because you've got this creator, or two creators, Justin and Dan,
Yeah.
where Dan comes from Community and Justin, I guess, I don't know Justin's story.
I think he came from
But-
Channel 101 or something, which also was
okay.
Dan's thing, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Now, is this just something your voiceover guy sent you? You send in the reading and then you end up doing, or was it a different story?
No, I think that's what it was. I don't remember exactly. I thought for the longest time, and I used to say this at conventions when we would go with Rick and Morty, that the part was offered to me. And then a year or so ago, I was looking through my old emails, and I saw, oh my God, I auditioned for Jerry, and I actually had the track. So yeah, I had to correct myself on the record, but yeah, it was an audition, and then happily I got it. And we had to go through a few Beths, not because of lack of talent, just because of production stuff. Like Allison Brie was going to be Beth, but NBC wouldn't let her out of her Community contract. Not that she needed to be out. It was like some bullshit rigmarole. But happily we got Sarah Chalk, who is also brilliant and delightful. But yeah, that's been a much more paced out, slower road. I mean, I don't even remember how many years ago it was that we did the pilot.
Right.
But it was a while before the pilot, before the first season after the pilot, and the second season, everything was very paced out. And it wasn't until finally that Adult Swim made this 70 episode deal with Dan and Justin at the time that we were like, okay, and we know this is happening, we know, and that was so great for the writers, it was so great for the production, just so like, okay, we can work on the next season, and as a result, I just recorded the final episode of season 9 2 days ago. Season 8 is premiering on May 25th on Adult Swim. But we've recorded I have a little more to do on that last episode, but we've recorded almost all of season 9. Now it has to be animated, and it has to, a lot of things have to happen.
Right.
But
That's the whole thing with animation, is it takes forever based
does.
on compared to SNL, where it takes a week.
Yeah.
I don't want to comment on the conflict or whatever it was that happened on the show, because I don't know anything about it. If people want to look it up, they can find whatever they find on the internet. What I'm interested in is if there's a big shakeup like there was on Rick and Morty, how does that affect a regular just Joe actor like yourself? Do you get an email? Does someone fill you in and say, here's what's going on, we're going to have a new guy playing it? What happens?
I can't remember exactly how I found out the details. I know Scott Martyr, who is the showrunner and who is the person that directs me in the voiceover sessions, he sort of discussed to me some of what was going on in one of our sessions. And then there also was a big cast and production Zoom meeting, at least one, maybe more than one, where everybody got on to talk about it. And it was heavy, you know. A lot of people were very understandably upset about what had happened, and we were also all worried about the fate of the show. Like, are we going to get to keep doing this? And you know, and also people put so much work into something, and to have the idea of to have it be besmirched in any way or have something negative attached to it was very, you know, demoralizing, I think. Happily, you know, they did this amazing search and found Harry and Ian to play Morty and Rick. You know, and they're such delightful guys. They're just lovely people, very excited to play the parts, and you know, you just it's ultimately all for the best. And we're all very happy, and hopefully we'll be able to keep doing it for many more seasons, you know.
Well, I'm sure that it's such a great show, and the ideas that they come up with are amazing. And your performance is really, again, it not anchors it, but grounds it so that the craziness can happen. I'm a big fan. I really love the show.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, I do too.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. And besides classes, I also offer a one-on-one session. It's an hour just between you and me working on a particular piece of material, whether it's for an upcoming audition or maybe you're working on something and you need to have that breakthrough moment. These are really, really fun, and they're really, really great because they're really personalized and intense in all the good ways that intense can be. So if you're working on something, if you want to break through, if you want to have a one-on-one session where you're not working with other people, this is the way to do it. All the information is in the classes page on workingactorsschool.com. Act 4, questions. Okay, so we're back at the questions, which is based on a set of questions that my wife, Tina, has come up with, which we now title Tina's Gotta Know. And here are the questions, okay? So the first one is, that's showbiz. Now, what is the most Hollywood moment in your life?
The most Hollywood moment in my life. One that comes to mind, I don't know if it is the most, but I somehow got on the guest list for a party at Jeff Bezos's house in Brentwood. So I don't go out a lot, but I was like, well, I want to go to that. So I brought Natasha, my wife, and we went. And you know, and at a certain point in the sort of the gathering area, I ran into Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher, and you know, just sort of started having an exchange with them. And like John Hamm came up at a certain point and said hey, and you know, just a lot of celebrities and you know, that kind of thing. But that also happened at the SNL 50th, and you know, so many celebrities, so many people around, such a fun, good energy, you know.
Right.
Yeah, there've been so many
I should have
Hollywood
asked about
moments.
the 50th as well. I mean, that's a great Hollywood moment because it happened here, but the 50th had to be overwhelming in a lot of ways for everyone. What was your experience with that?
Well, you know, the main thing that I did with the 50th was the concert, the live concert, and I only did that because of Andy and Akiva and Yorma. But they brought me in again to do this snippet from Lazy Sunday in this medley of many of the songs from their digital shorts. And when Andy texted me and said, "Hey, would you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course," not knowing really what the scope of it was going to be. And then getting there to rehearse and being in the rehearsal room, and there's Eddie Vedder, and that Gaga wasn't in there, but to find out that I was going to be performing with her and these other people and T-Pain and Bad Bunny, and it was like, wow, this is kind of a amazing, cool, badass thing that I'm getting to be a part of here on the stage of Radio City Music Hall, and
Right.
so that was pretty cool. And then I got to do a little digital short bit in the regular show. But yeah, it was just fantastic, and getting to see. Again, going back to Jerry Collins and Lori Nassau were there at the party, and I hadn't seen them in so many years, even though we all live out here in LA. So that was just such a treat, and some of the SNL writers that I hadn't seen in many years were there, and so it was as fantastic and fun and lovely as you would imagine.
That's great. I mean, look, I'm a fan. I've seen the show since it started. I love watching the show, and it just was a wonderful experience for me to see all of the favorites and all of the things that you did. And your performance was great. I mean, it can be daunting, when you're doing Lazy Sunday with three guys in an apartment or on a street to a pre-recorded tape, I'm sure, hearing out of tiny little speakers. It's different than Radio City Music Hall and reproducing it. That's amazing.
Well, what prepared me for that was Andy and Akiva and Yorma went on tour as The Lonely Island and performed a lot of their songs. And they brought me along. They would have brought me on for all of them if I could have, but they brought me on for like 5 out of 10 performances to do Lazy Sunday live. And, and some of those were in front of, one of those was at Bonnaroo Music Festival, and others were just these big music venues. And so that really, working on that and preparing for that, really, that even though it was a few years ago, was great sort of preparation for doing Radio City, So.
What a great experience.
Yeah.
All right. So, second question.
Yes.
That's Showbiz Part 2. What is your most embarrassing Hollywood moment?
Oh, most embarrassing Hollywood moment.
Like I'll give you one while you're thinking. See,
Okay.
Like I was in an elevator. I had just found out from my agent. I was at my agent's office, and I was in an elevator, and I just found out that I didn't get a part, and I was really depressed and really upset. And I was in the elevator, and the elevator doors were closing, and this guy was racing forward with a bunch of books in his hands, and he was just kind of like a big guy, and I was feeling really mean and just depressed, and I wasn't going to hold the elevator for him. And as the doors are closing, Francis Ford Coppola runs up, and then the doors close, and I realize I've just closed the elevator doors on Francis Ford Coppola.
Wow.
And I say that's would be my most embarrassing Hollywood moment. So
I guess the one that I think of is seeing Kirsten Dunst at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. She had hosted the show. I had done a rap about her because I had a crush on her, of course. And she had done a sketch with me and Catan. She did the DeMarco Brothers with us. And it's just a mark of my own insecurity or whatever. But I saw her, this is many, many years later, at MoMA, and she was there with a couple of friends. And I just thought, I don't want to bother her. I don't want to bother her. And I couldn't know for sure that she was going to necessarily remember me. So I just didn't want to be presumptuous, and I just didn't say anything to her. Now, she didn't say anything to me either, but the next day, Natasha and I were at a gallery in the gallery district, and one of the women who worked at the gallery had been one of the people with her with Kirsten, and somehow it came up. She's like, yeah, we saw you yesterday at MoMA, me and Kirsten or whatever. I was like, oh, I don't know. It wasn't necessarily embarrassing. I just always felt like an idiot for not saying something, I should have just said hi and not be so insecure.
No, I get it. I get it. I totally get it. You know, it's a weird thing when, like what you explained with SNL, when you're in there and you're doing the scenes with these big movie stars, you're on a stage, they're a foot away from you, and you're doing something together. But then when you're out in the wild, it's like they become the celebrity again, and it becomes something different, where it's sort of like, it's weird. It's the best way I can explain.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I saw Ian McKellen and Halle Berry at one of the Comic-Cons. They were chatting, but I didn't go over to them because I just thought, in the span of their careers and all the people that they've met, how likely am I to have made a mark in their memory from, their brief time on SNL? Halle Berry was even on a flight with me, and I just felt like, oh, I don't know if she'll remember me. So,
but it's interesting that you still feel this way. I just interviewed Jill Whalen, who played Vicky on The Love Boat, and I did the math. She didn't have to. She'd worked with over 1,000 real stars, like
wow,
Ginger Rogers and Buddy Hackett, and like name somebody that had done anything she'd worked with.
Oh, because they'd been on The Love Boat.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so every 3 stories on The Love Boat, 2 actors in each story, and they were always somebody famous. So she'd worked with over 1,000, just amazing
Legends.
people. Lillian Gish was one of the people she had worked with.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
But besides her, you're like the second person that I would say has probably worked with the most celebrities. But like what you're saying, in a format that's so compressed and so mind-altering that you don't remember some scenes you were in. You don't know when you're approaching these people like that they would even know who you are, because maybe you didn't have a scene with them, or who knows.
Yeah. I did say hi to Scarlett Johansson on a flight as we were getting off, because I not only, Scarlett had hosted once or twice while I was on, and then I knew her husband Colin Jost, and so I felt comfortable enough saying hey.
And how was that interaction?
She was lovely. She was great. She remembered me, and just couldn't have been friendlier and more charming.
I like the happy ending on that. That's good. Okay, so question 3. Show me the money. Now, in this town, we get opportunities, or we're around. What is your biggest missed financial opportunity? Now, I'm not looking for numbers, but you hear things on the sets, or people are talking, or someone approaches you, hey, let's make a milkshake company, or whatever it is. What's your biggest missed financial opportunity?
I guess, I don't know, the screenwriter, Zach Penn, he said he wanted to write a movie with me. I worked on this movie called The Grand with him, which was largely improvised. And I guess he liked what I had come up with, which was not fully improvised. I'd written a lot of stuff. And he said, I want to write something with you. And I just didn't, I had no idea about writing a screenplay. I just didn't feel the confidence. He was a pretty established screenwriter, and and I never followed up on it with him. I've seen him since. There's no bad blood, but I was just like, I wish I'd had it in me to do that. Another thing, Will Ferrell had this movie idea that he wanted to do with me, but he hadn't written it, and we didn't have a writer for it. And I just didn't feel like I had it in me to tackle it, but I wish I had, I guess.
It's hard to express to people when I'm sure listening to this going, but you're Chris Parnell, you're famous and funny and you're talented, but you're also, what's the word? Human. And everybody has those feelings of like, I don't know. And I kind of come up, myself, I've kind of come on the other side of like, I think I have the same like insecurities, but maybe because being a child actor, I realized that I have the insecurities, but maybe I can trick other people into thinking that they're not really there.
Right.
So they exist, but I just sort of push forward anyways.
Yeah.
I think you'd be a really good writer, and I think you should try it personally. I think that you've got all the skills and instincts. It's just a grind.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, you've created your own stuff. You definitely know what you're doing.
All right, number 4, show and tell. As a teenager, and I already know the answer to this, I'm betting on it. As a teenager, what is your favorite poster in your room, and how did you come to obtain it?
Oh, let's see. My favorite poster as a teenager. Well, I don't think I still had the Farrah poster up as a teenager. I think I had let that
I did.
go. I feel like I had her poster up when I was with preteen years.
Okay.
I had a poster. What did I have? I had a poster of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing from some movie. Not that like I knew a lot of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movies or any of them necessarily. Somehow I just thought, oh, that's cool. And if I ever get a girl over here in the room, I bet she'll think that's cool. I mean, it's so lame. It's so lame. I had a cool poster of a room with a view, but I don't know if that was high school or college. That might have been college. Yeah.
All right.
The movie
Good
poster.
to know.
Yeah.
Number 5, Showdown. What is the best thing you've ever done and the worst thing you've ever done professionally? Like, what do you think? What are you most proud of and least proud of, I guess?
Oh. Most proud of. I mean, I guess it would be hard to sort of pinpoint one thing, I think. I mean, I guess overall I'd say SNL is what I'm most proud of. But I don't know. I guess I could say...
That's a fair...
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could also say Dr. Spichemin. You know, I'm pretty proud of Dr. Spichemin.
Okay.
And then the least proud was a movie called The Dogfather that I just... You know, it's a kid's movie, and I don't like myself in it because you can kind of tell I'm not having that much fun. And it was a point in my life, I don't know, I didn't have the wherewithal to sort of embrace it fully. I just didn't have enough confidence in what was happening around me, and I tried to make the best of it, you know. But yeah, I think that was, you know, one of my worst performances probably.
Well, thanks for being honest. I have not seen The Dogfather, but I
can't
agree
believe
that,
that.
you know, 30 Rock or SNL is a pretty awesome choice for the other. Okay, number 6, No Show. What part did you want but didn't get?
There was a part in this St. Denis Medical with Wendy McClendon-Covey and David Alan Grier and everybody. Great cast. And I auditioned for the David Alan Grier role. And I knew that it was very much in my wheelhouse, and I knew that I had a pretty good shot at it. And apparently I did come close, but then they ended up casting David in the role. And, you know, I mean, he's David Alan Grier, so what are you going to do? You know, it's hard to argue against that, you know.
You're Chris Parnell, so it's hard to argue, but it goes back to the idea of like, just that's the guy that they wanted. Not, I don't think you can at that level judge based on professional or based on talent. It's just sort of what mix, you know, what's in the mix.
Right.
That's a good answer. Okay, favorite show. What movie has most influenced you?
Most influenced me. I guess Chariots of Fire, I think. I mean, I've said before in interviews and things it was my favorite movie. It is one of my favorite movies. But also just something about it was just so beautiful the way it was shot, and the acting in it is so uniformly fantastic, and the direction, and it also is just this I sort of this view of this idyllic world that is so foreign to me, that both the wealth and the Englishness of it, and back in the 1920s, and I don't know, just somehow it's always just really hit me, you know. I just always love, and then the music, the Vangelis music, you know, and the running aspect of it, and because I run, not at that level, but I like to run is for exercise, and so yeah, that one's always spoken to me, I think. But my other favorite is David Lynch's Dune. Now I liked the new Dune, the Denis Villeneuve Dunes, but the Lynch one is the closest one to my heart. So. Just for the record.
Good, really good answers. I'm a big fan of the Lynch Dune as well. Now, show me again. What is the movie that you rewatch the most? It can be the same movie or a different film.
I guess it would be one of those two. I don't rewatch a lot, but it would be one of those two. Probably probably Dune. The one that I would like to watch again. I'm just thinking of is Spinal Tap, because that's my favorite comedic movie. That and The Meaning of Life by Monty Python. Yeah. So yeah. But I'm trying to think if there's sometimes there are things that'll come on the TV that you just like you can't stop watching. Even though I don't necessarily set out to watch it, like if The Bourne Identity comes on, one of the Bourne movies, those are hard to turn away from. Those are so riveting and fun.
Agreed. I totally get that. And then finally, show me some love. What is your favorite performance of mine?
I think it would be in the sketch you wrote. It was at a fast food place, I think. This was in the Sunday show.
Yes.
Yeah.
The small, medium, or large.
Small, medium, or large. That's right. Yeah. That's the one that comes to mind.
I forgot about that until you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
You were this, like, real sort of slacker kind of dude. It was. I can't remember the details of it. I just remember thinking it was very funny.
What I loved about it, it happened from a real thing I think at Del Taco. The whole premise is that I ordered, and this was the real part, that the place didn't have a small. They just had a medium and a large.
Yeah.
And it got me really frustrated. It's like, how can you have a medium if you don't have a small drink? You have to have the small in order to have the medium. There's no way to have that without it. And that's kind of where the sketch started. And I think I just focused a lot of my anger into that sketch, which, again, anger in comedy is always very fun to me.
Now, were you the one who worked behind the counter, or was I the one that worked behind the counter?
I think you were the one that worked behind the counter.
Okay,
so
you're the one that. That's right. That's what it was. So no, you weren't a slacker. I was like sort of a burnout kind of guy. I think that's what it was.
And then I think you brought in Andy as the manager.
yeah, that's right.
Trying to explain it.
Yeah. Amazing, Andy.
God bless Andy Houts. I say his name as many times as I can.
Yeah.
I love the man. He's missed. He was one of the funniest people I've ever met, and no one will ever know, unfortunately, except us. I mean, we know.
Yeah.
Epilogue.
Okay, now we're in the epilogue. Final thing we're talking about. This is where you plug anything. I noticed that Micro Budget's coming out with you, Bobby Moynihan, and Hal Linden. But I don't know. Do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, there's that Micro Budget, which was a lot of fun. Rick and Morty is coming on May 25th on Adult Swim. Season 8 is premiering. Love, Death, and Robots. I have a part in that. Also, I think premiering on May 25th on Netflix, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's Netflix. That's a really great anthology animation show if you haven't caught it. And
it really
I love
is.
your pieces in the stuff that I saw in the original season.
Yeah, I haven't seen the final product. I saw some of it in the trailer, but yeah, I play a cat. But yeah, I'm excited to see that too. And let's see if I think if there's anything else to plug. I don't know. I do occasional voices on my adventures with Superman. Another animated job.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking of right now, I guess.
Well, that's someone else's entire career. So congratulations on your success, man.
Thanks.
So, Chris, I can't, again, thank you enough for taking so much time. I've really hogged your whole day here. But I love hanging out with you. I loved our time at Groundlings. And thank you for doing this. You're one of my favorite comedians. And, I just want everybody to watch whatever you're doing.
Thanks, Patrick. Well, thanks for having me. It was just so much fun to do. And, from the time that you reached out a while back, it's been just so nice to reconnect with you after all these years, and this was a blast.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody, thanks for listening. I'm really, really glad you're here and checking out the podcast. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's a video podcast over on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you get the video ones. All of my socials are Working Actors School on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Please check us out. If you want any information about the school, it is at workingactorsschool.com. We've got classes going on all the time. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.